Welcome to the Airgun Show. This week we've got the Weihrauch HW44 PCP pistol on test, but before that I'm targeting grey squirrels off a feeding station. The permission I'm out on today is one that we've visited and filmed at before, though we've not been here for quite a while. The woods here are managed for conservation and the owner will not tolerate grey squirrels. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the damage that they do to trees by bark stripping and to birds by eating eggs and chicks. But the owner here is also convinced that they have a serious negative impact on other small mammals, particularly dormice, by monopolising natural food sources. And one thing that we have witnessed here is that they really do absolutely decimate the hazelnut crop every year. One thing the owner has done here is to set up feeding stations that he keeps filled with wheat. Now, that creates areas where I know that I'm likely to encounter squirrels when I come here, but it also gives him a rough idea of how many there are about, based on whether he sees any squirrels at the feeders and how quickly that wheat's going down. Now, it appears that through the winter and spring months there have actually been very few squirrels about, which is good news because it suggests that the previous campaigns that I've put back here, knocking those squirrels right back, have actually had a relatively lasting impression. That said, a little while ago he did actually spot a couple of squirrels on one of the feeders, which is not a good sign. If he saw two, I'm convinced there are a lot more than that about. I'm actually going to be using my FAC rated Daystate Mark IV today. Now, I've actually been using Legal Limit a lot this year, but this gun will just give me a bit more reach if any long shots do present themselves. Now, this one's actually a right old workhorse. I've had it for about 8 years and it's put in fantastic service. It's given me absolutely no problems, and it's a real testament to just how reliable the electronic internals of these Daystates can be as long as you look after your gun. Right, well that's enough talk. Let's head over to the feeder and see what's happening there. As I've not been here for a while, the main purpose of today's visit is reconnaissance. I want to check the lie of the land, see whether I'll need to clear any undergrowth out of the way, and work out the best place to dig in for my future visits over the next couple of weeks. I'm confident that I should get a few shots though, especially after hearing that squirrels have been seen on the feeder. After covering a fair amount of ground, I slow down and proceed with a little more stealth as I near the feeder. There's always a chance of catching a squirrel in the act, and that's exactly what I've done here. I've decided to set up the sticks for added support. There are very tall nettle stems between me and the feeder, so I'm pretty well concealed, and the breeze that's whistling down the opposite side of the gully is helping to mask any noise I'm creating. Just as I was waiting for the shot squirrel to drop, another one has appeared on the feeder, offering me the chance of a double before I've even settled into a hiding place. Well, that was a heck of a start. As I came around the corner I slowed down a bit because I thought there might just be one on the feeder. It turned out there was. Managed to get the sticks set up, shot that squirrel, and as it was dangling just before it dropped, which squirrels often do when you shoot them in the head, another one came bundling in. Looked like it actually pushed it off as it was hanging there. Anyway, managed to reload without that one noticing me, and made it two from this position, which as I said is a fantastic start. So I'm not going to pick them up now because I don't want to cause any more disturbance than I need to. I'm going to get into position, and all being well, we'll bag a few more. I couldn't have wished for a better start. All I need to do now is find a place to settle down and wait. Right, well, looking around, the big change since we were last here is just how overgrown it's got. And in fact, that first couple of squirrels that we got, I could only just get clear shots over the tops of the nettles, so they're going to make life tricky when I'm sat down. However, looking down through here, there is a bit of a run like deer have been going through here. That's hit down the undergrowth a little bit, so I think what I'll do is I'll settle down here. I'm not going to mess about building a hide. I think I've probably got enough natural cover. If I do need a hide, I'll build one at the end of this session and use it next time. But for now, I just want to settle into position and see what's about. A great thing about targeting a feeding station is that I have a pretty good idea where my quarry is going to show itself. That means I can set up my sticks and get myself lined up ready to take steady, comfortable shots when chances arise. As is so often the case, my preparations include putting on my head net just to help me blend in with the woodland environment. And finally, it's just a matter of loading up and waiting for the squirrels to come to the feeder. Once settled into position, patience is the airgun shooter's greatest asset. There are worse ways to while away time than taking in the sights and sounds of the woodland setting. But I don't have to wait too long before another bushy-tailed diner turns up to raid the grain. Well, there you go. Another one hung on a bit there. Now, as I said earlier on, that is a very typical reaction when you shoot squirrels with headshots. They're effectively dead, but they seem to have a nervous reflex that makes them clench, and that just results in them sometimes dangling before they drop down to the ground. And so the wait continues. Quite frankly, I'm already surprised by the amount of action we've had, especially as the primary purpose of this visit was reconnaissance. This feeder really is working its magic, and the squirrels are clearly well onto it. Well, that one's expired in the damned feeder, which I really didn't want to happen. Now, I didn't make these feeders, and if I had, I'd have made the feed tray so they didn't jut out quite so much at the front, and that would significantly reduce the risk of that happening. Now, I had hoped that that squirrel was going to flip out, but it hasn't. It's stuck in there. I'm not going to break cover because I don't want to make too much disturbance, so we'll sit tight and see what happens with it in there. Having a dead squirrel in the feed tray is not ideal, but it didn't discourage this one from venturing down for a closer look. Well, that one didn't seem too impressed with the dead one, but it still came into the feeder and settled long enough for me to get the shot. Now, an interesting thing here is, that there's only wheat in these feeders, and I usually swear by peanuts at this time of year when there's a lot of natural food around, just to lure them away from that. But they're clearly very well onto this stuff. It's all action this morning, and we soon have yet another squirrel on the feeder. Well, they really do seem to be queuing up for that wheat. I certainly didn't expect to see this many today. The flurry of activity does eventually tail off, but there's no denying just how effective the feeding station has been this morning. It's certainly making a very useful contribution towards the squirrel control here. Right, well, Nikki needs to get away, so we're going to wrap up the filming now. But although it has slowed down a little bit, I'm going to stick around for another hour or so. We have seen a heck of a lot more squirrels than we'd expected to today, so I'm eager to get back probably in the next day or two and have another go at them, but I'm not going to mess about building a hide. In all honesty, those squirrels are so eager to get to that wheat that they're coming straight to the feeder and they're completely oblivious to us. More grey squirrels brought to book there, and certainly more to be had. And now, it's the Airgun Show news.
This is the Airgun Show news. It's finally here. The game fair starts tomorrow. Taking over the grounds of Hatfield House from Friday to Sunday, the undisputed king of outdoor field sports events returns for its 59th year and its first ever at the Hertfordshire location. Alongside a huge shooting line, populated by some of the biggest airgun companies in the business, there'll be gun dog displays, gamekeeping land management exhibits, a busy main arena, the famous Game Fair Theatre, and loads of shopping opportunities on Gunmakers Road. We'll see you there as we camp out on the Airgun shooter stand and roam the aisles for all the news from the fair. And if you're eyeing up a big buy at the Game Fair, there's a new finance initiative that will make it easier to afford new gear. Game Fair Finance will offer personal loans before, during and after the show, with a stand in the fishing village processing applications on the day and depositing funds in your account within 2 hours. It's also offering interest-free finance on camping packages and payment instalment plans for that new top-end PCP or swanky scope. Visit Game Fair Finance at the weekend or get the money beforehand by heading to gamefairfinance.co.uk. Police in Scotland have called airgun licensing a success, even though thousands of airguns are still going unlicensed. Holyrood's Criminal Secretary for Justice admitted to a backlog of more than 3,500 applications stretching back nearly half a year. Owners are left with the choice between lodging their guns with a licensed friend or gun shop, handing them over to the police, or risking being prosecuted. But police chiefs have nonetheless told the media how much of a success the scheme has been, after it resulted in 21,000 airguns being handed in. And finally, brush up on your best practice by downloading the Basque Code of Good Shooting Practice now. Newly updated by 10 shooting organisations, the code contains in-depth advice on what to do in every shooting situation. It emphasises that everyone has their role to play in good practice for shooting and conservation, not just those who pull the trigger, but also landowners, gamekeepers, and even beaters and pickers up. Download the code now from basque.org.uk. That was the Airgun Show news.
Weihrauch has a reputation for making great air pistols, and their HW100 series rifles are among some of the best PCPs available. This is the new HW44 pistol. Based on the action of the acclaimed HW110 pre-charged air rifle, it promises to be something quite special. A quick glance will leave you in no doubt regarding this pistol's pedigree. It looks a heck of a lot like the HW110 around the cylinder and action. But the HW44 is a great pistol in its own right, and it boasts some very impressive features all of its own. It certainly feels like a very tough and robustly built pistol. Weighing in at about 1.3 kilos, it feels solid without being too heavy. Measuring up at about 34 centimetres long, it's certainly not a compact pistol, but it still feels very well balanced in the hand. Handling is enhanced by the moulded grips, which are sculpted to cradle the contours of your hand. Although ambidextrous, they make for a pretty good fit and should suit most shooters. My hands are quite big, and the bottom of my palm does extend just beyond the shelf. Nonetheless, it still makes for a pretty comfortable hold. As with the HW110, much of the HW44's chassis is made from ballistic polymer, a high-tech material that's being used more and more in firearm production. It doesn't feel in the least bit flimsy and really suits this gun's styling. The HW44's frame incorporates a couple of accessory rails. The bottom one would lend itself well to mounting a laser sight, while the top one is well positioned for scope mounting. Weihrauch actually produce a 2x20 long eye relief scope that's perfect for pistol use. It costs £120 and should be a great way to extract this pistol's full accuracy potential. You don't have to fit a scope though, as the HW44 comes fitted with open sights that feature a post and notch aiming element. They're screw adjustable for windage and elevation, and I have to say that I'm very impressed with just how accurately I've been able to shoot with them. This pistol is a PCP, and you refill its stubby cylinder by pushing the quick fill probe into the inlet at the front after removing the friction fit plug. A self-regulating valve makes for very consistent performance with power levels just below the 6 foot-pound legal limit. The 177 caliber test gun turns out around 100 shots from a 200 bar fill, and Weihrauch says you can expect around 125 in 2.2. That's very impressive from such a small cylinder. And keeping an eye on air reserves is simple thanks to the clearly marked gauge at the front of the cylinder. The HW44 boasts a multi-shot firing system that's based around a 10-shot drum magazine, and you get 2 supplied with the gun. Weihrauch's tried and tested magazine design looks very simple, yet it works extremely well. It's easy to reload and doesn't seem to suffer from misalignment or with jam-ups. To remove the magazine, pull the side lever all the way back and then push up and hold the retaining lever that's just beneath it. You then pull the magazine out from the left while pushing it from the right. With the magazine out, you hold it with the smoothest side of the drum facing away from you and load pellets nose first. When the magazine is full, you push the retaining lever back up and push the magazine in from the left. The retaining lever will then drop back into position when the magazine is properly seated. You then push the side lever back into the forward position and the gun is cocked, loaded and ready to shoot. The system is driven by that side lever, which can be swapped to the opposite side for left-handers. Cycling the side lever cocks the gun and indexes the magazine, quickly setting you up for another shot. It's a very slick and reliable mechanism and makes for great fast-fire action on the plinking range. If you want to hush the muzzle report right down to stop your garden practice sessions from annoying the neighbours, Weihrauch produce a very neat and effective moderator for the HW44. It retails for £65 and does a great job of keeping it quiet. This pistol is much more than just a backyard plinker though, and that's more than apparent by the quality of its 2-stage trigger mechanism. It is adjustable, though Weihrauch advise against tinkering with it unless you really know what you're doing. Fortunately, this one was brilliant straight from the box. The first stage has just the right amount of travel before coming to a distinct stop and then braking very cleanly and predictably. The manual safety catch is ambidextrous and has levers on both sides of the action. The pistol is safe when it's in the down and forward position, and you then nudge it up and back when you're ready to take the shot. Right, that's an overview of the Weihrauch HW44's main features. I'll show you what it shoots like now. I'm going to shoot it rested, but I'm just going to use the open sights so I can show you how the basic unit performs without tellies fitted. Well, I'm not the world's most experienced pistol shooter and I don't often use open sights, but I'm pretty happy with that. Now that's a 5-shot group, shot over 12 metres in relatively breezy conditions, and it is pretty tight apart from the second one which I managed to snatch off. This is a really enjoyable gun to shoot, and that recoilless firing cycle clearly makes it very easy to shoot accurately. The Weihrauch HW44 isn't cheap at £620, but I reckon its performance and features justify its price point. It's basically a fist-sized PCP, and a very good one at that. It's a slick performer and very addictive to shoot, whether punching paper, nailing knockdowns or toppling tins. And given its precision, I reckon you could also use it for some close range ratting as long as you stick to headshots. It certainly is a very versatile pistol. That's all for this week, but we'll be back again in a fortnight. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you aren't already a member of the BASC, it's time you joined the organisation that works to promote and protect your sport.